Oh, good afternoon, folks. This is the return visit of Robbert van der Broek, who is a very well-known psychic, very controversial psychic in Europe. I've known of his work for over a decade through a mutual friend named Nancy Talbot. They did a lot of work on crop circles, on psychic phenomena, UFOs. Robbert has an uncanny ability that has been tested rigorously by American engineers like Don Drazen. And this ability is that Robbert can take a camera and sense a presence and shoot a picture into some area of a room or some space, and a certain figure will appear, in many cases quite recognizable figures that we know. I've been very impressed by the spirit photography of Robbert van der Broek, who has taken pictures of many spirits, including that of John Lennon. And if you go to robertvanderbroek.com, you can see some samples of his work. As I said, he's been very controversial because people, as in America, people become very well known, very famous, and then there's a media backlash against their authenticity, against their popularity. And Robbert has suffered that in Europe, trying to discredit him. However, that has no bearing on what I'm going to say in endorsing Robbert's psychic abilities. And this is because after the last broadcast that we did, I always call back my guests and thank them for being my guests. And on that day, Robbert and I got into another discourse, separate and apart from the broadcast. And in the course of it, I mentioned the story I've mentioned this year, that my mother had passed away in January of last year, and that 7 days later, my stepfather passed away, and that I had a visitation from my mother and my stepfather, an awesome experience where I was touched, physically touched, and imbued with an energy that discharged, all I can call it is white lightning in my spine. It lit up my body from within out. So I related this story to Robbert, and almost instantly Robbert reacted to a presence that appeared in his apartment in the Netherlands, and he started to describe to me my mother, her feelings, her personality, her emotions. Then he went on and started to describe her possessions. He kept asking me, did she like seashells? Did she like crystals? And I have a mountain of it. After my mother passed away, I inherited all into a mountain of her wonderful collection of crystals, seashells, artifacts, sculptures, and so on. Some of which I may offer as an incentive for people to contribute to Revolution Radio. So I will mention that a bit later. However, a lot of psychics have a knack for tuning into a person or doing generalities in their descriptions that elicit more information. Now, all I told him was that my mother had passed away and that I'd had this spiritual experience. And suddenly he started to basically channel my mother. However, a lot of people can do that thing about feelings and possessions. But all of a sudden, Robbert says to me, "What was your mother's name?" And I didn't answer. And he said, "Because I hear a name. Is her name something like Eins?" And all of a sudden, I start to smile. And I said, "What did you say?" And he said, "Your mother's name, is it something like Eins or Ines or..." I said, "Spell it." And he says, I-N-E-S. And I said, "Robbert, you just spelled out my mother's name." And that was her name, Doña Inez. And it was quite exhilarating, I'll tell you. And Robbert felt surrounded by the love of my mother, I tell you. And it was palpable, and it was part of her presence. So with that introduction, I'd like to bring on Johnny Webb, who has worked very hard to bring this colloquy together. And I'd like to welcome Emerson in British Columbia. Emerson, can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
Very good. Okay, now we have a good connection. So, Johnny, take it away. Tell me how, first of all, how you became acquainted with Robbert and why you contacted me to get this friendship going. And it is a friendship.
Good evening, everyone, and Robert Vandenbroek and Emerson. Good evening to you, sir, and the audience. Yeah, I met Robert through the Dr. J Radio live show that we do, and he'd been on our show last year. And the last time I spoke to him, he was having people call in the show live, and he was tuning in straight away to a certain gentleman I remember that had gallstones and other problems that caused his demise. And we had a girl on here, and she described it, that it was her father. She was living in London, but she was from Germany, and she emphasised that these symptoms and exactly what was going on with his death. And then she asked him to describe what he did for work, and Robert said, well, I see someone who makes suits, a tailor. And again, he was spot on with this girl that she written, and she says, I'm crying now because I know that you're real and I feel it. And this was all coming in live, and I'm running this on Facebook as a co-host, and it's all happening live. And so I knew it was real, and it was touching. And so that was an impression on me, not just the first time, but for each time he was on there. And then he approached me about 3 months ago, and he said, look, I really enjoyed having an experience on your show, that you were believers, you were open-minded, and, I'm having a lot of trouble here with the media. The media has turned against mediums, turned against any sort of spiritual stuff, and it's having an impression because we're all being called charlatans, and I'm not a charlatan, and I'm not a charlatan, and I'd like you, if you can, to help us. So I agreed to introduce him to some of the other radio co-hosts and shows that I know, including Robert Morningstar here is a great show. That I love his show, and so I put him in touch, and then it appeared that Robert had ability, obviously, with his medium side, not just the UFO side and the crop circle side, which is very interesting, and also the alien connection that he has as well. But for a lot of people, that's so much variety that people try to sort of destroy him for that, when really these are gifts. I call them gifts, And so for me, I've always felt the minute that he approached me, that if I could help him, that I felt open-hearted, that, yeah, sure, I would love to help you. And so it's all voluntary, it's all free. It's even his own service is always free. But I'm happy to be here this evening because I believe that we've been asked to help Emerson. And I hope very much that they too can connect and have a great show. So I'll give it back to you now, Robert.
Thank you. For the folks who didn't hear the first program, Robert's psychic abilities were triggered at a very early age by a UFO encounter that he had around the age of 6 or 7. And then he started to manifest psychic abilities, which the school system noticed and started to try to explain away using psychiatry. And Robbert went through a very difficult ordeal until, under treatment, he proved to the therapist or the psychologist that he really was genuine. And the psychologist wrote a letter saying, this man, this boy, exhibits exceptional abilities, it is not a fraud, it is not mental illness, and so on and so forth, and cleared him. But as one who shares in living the psychic life, it is very difficult to make one's way in a materialistic world where skepticism and denial abound. So, Robbert, would you briefly recount your early UFO experience, and then we can go into some of the work that you have done, channeling, mediumship, spirit photography, and so on. And then we can talk about also finding missing persons, which is a big part of the show today. And I am going to devote both hours of the show, Morningstar Report and the cognitive resonance that follows, to this topic. So, Please tell us about your. Well, I think that everyone's really intrigued by the idea of how a UFO experience can trigger psychic abilities. So let's begin with that. That's a good starting point.
Yes, thank you, Robert, for your introduction. I remember myself that I was, I think, 6 years old, 5, 6, 7 years old, 5, 6, 7, and I was playing with other kids in the street by my house, and I was watching up in the air. I was hearing a sort of flute noise, and the other children was also watch up in the air when I was yelling, look, 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 there's a flying disc in the air. And then they was watching also, and I was yelling, look, look, a spaceship, and then the doors, people was open the doors, and growing up people, adult people,
hey, Robert, Robert,
yes?
I do have to interrupt. I want to ask you a favor. Can you remember what you said in Dutch and say it for us?
In Dutch?
How you say it. You didn't say it in English. I would like to hear in Dutch what you yelled out to the kids.
Okay, I will do that. Okay, that's funny. I will do that. This. Okay, I was yelling to the kids, kijk, 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 een vliegende schotel, een ruimteschip.
Thank you very much. Okay.
That's Dutch. Dutch is one of the most difficult languages from the world, but people was telling me that it is very difficult, but I was growing up with this language, but I like to speak English, then I think that more people will understand what I say.
Of course. That was a trick question because, there are a lot of people who are skeptics out there, and so when you ask a question like that, if the person really didn't do it, they have to think a long time. But say it one more time and then continue the story, would you? Thank you.
Kijk, 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 een vliegende schotel in de lucht, een ruimteschip, een UFO.
Beautiful.
That's Dutch, but I was yelling, and the parents from the children that was playing outside was coming out the houses, and was also see the big flying disc, white with a beautiful light around it. It was almost so big as a big aeroplane, as a jumbo jet, and as a Boeing, and I was feel that the intelligence that was sitting in the UFO was knowing me and was visit me, and I was feel that it was very natural, very, it was not feel strange for me, but I was get a sort of medical feeling. I remember me that they was know me how I am and where I come from, and I was get something in my head, later it's important, but not now. And the UFO was disappear, slowly was going a little bit up in the air, and then it was disappear, and all the children was see that, and the growing ups was also see it. They still remember it now, these days, that what was happening there, that was real. And then I was take my ball, and I was play the game again, and I was forgot it. It was for me not a big deal. Later, when I was become more growing up, then I was discover that I was different, and I was not like it. I was on school, making my work, try to learn, try to get knowledge from things, and I was lost my concentration many times. I was see spirits. Now I know that what I was seeing, it was dead people. But on that moment, I was not knowing what I was see. I was expected everybody was see that, and sometimes I was hearing voices, and sometimes I was see creatures around my bed, or I was see people walking on the street, hovering around people, and I was expected everybody was seated. And when I was playing with another kid, and I was say to him, "Look, there is standing somebody in the doorway." And then the other child was say, "No, I don't see something." On that moment, I was realized that something was not right with me. That I was different. Okay. And then,
Robert, may I ask? Did all of this happen in Amsterdam? Were you living in Amsterdam at the time?
No, I was living between Breda and Roosendaal. That's, I think, maybe an hour and a half from Amsterdam.
Okay. And also, I would like to
southeast of Amsterdam.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I also like to ask. These were daytime experiences. They were not ghosts at night. You were actually in daytime seeing spirits, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I want people to know that it's not ghosts don't always come at night. They can come in broad daylight. And
exactly, yes.
Touch you
also in the night, but also by daytime. There was no specific time for it. I was living in Hoeven, a little village between Breda and Roosendaal, between two cities, a very small village. And I was see this, and people was telling me, no, it's not possible. And then my parents was going to psychiatric helpers, and they was decide bring him to a psychiatric institute for children. And then they was bring me there, and that was horrible, terrible. I must stay there for a year, sleeping there. And to the moment that a nurse was saying there, you are not crazy, you are psychic. I was also read minds there, and they was found it scary. There was no... It's not a psychiatric problem, it's a gift, but the law from the institute was, give him medicines, keep him, ignore what he's saying. The paranormal does not exist. There is no life after the death. And this nurse was fight for me, and they sued her. They was suing her. I hope that I say it good. She was lost her job. And then my parents was meet a psychological helper, and he was experienced something in his life. He have not a permission to talk about it, but he was feel very strong the presence from God around him, and that was give him the possibility to heal people with his hands and to help people in a distance. And my parents was go to Rens Hendricks. That is this person. He was helping me through a picture. On the moment that I was in the psychiatric institute, my parents was not telling me when they was go to him, and I was all the time feeling when Rens was make contact with me, I was feel that I was get a sort of surrogate father in a distance. He was know exactly how I am, where I come from, and I was feel that the consciousness that I was having as a child, that I was see that the association was very fake, and that most all the things in associations are almost lies and trend set and not real. I was feel that
do you mean, Robert, that in personal relationships in society, the way people interact was fake? Is that what you mean?
Not all the people, of course, but
no, of course
lots
not. But generally, perhaps superficial. Exactly. People are very superficial in
exactly. Yes, and that's born out anxiety. It's anxiety that people are not part of the group, and they walk all the same pathway then to have the same color in it's a sort of psychological collective anxiety. And I was seated as a child all the time, and I was found it very strange. But the school was learning me that it is strange that I think in that way, and that I have this sort of feelings. But when I was meet Rens, he was motivated, and he was learn me telepathic that it is good and that it is true what I feel. And then I was get more trust in myself, and then my gifts was become a little bit more closed, and then I think the institute was then decide that I can go out the institute. They was think that they was make me better. Then my gifts was stay quiet to the moment that I was 14, and then everything was coming back in the form of crop circles, that I was get a feeling that I must go to some field, and then I was see sometimes light balls, sometimes the circles was laying in the fields there, but sometimes I will see the crop circles was formed by light bulbs, first lonely and later with family, and later also with scientific researcher Nancy Talbot, the assistant from Professor Livingood. She was visit me, and she was also in 2001 see with me how a crop circle was forming by lights, and that makes me very happy. When first the farmers was some farmers was starting to be very angry to me. They was thinking that I was making the crop circles, and the reason was that I found them all the time for the first time. But that was the telepathic relation. Yeah.
That's very interesting. I have seen, that's how I came to know you. Nancy Talbot contacted us at UFO Digest, and we ran several stories.
Yes.
We ran several articles over the years over the crop circles and your psychic abilities, and we published some of those psychic spirit photography that you did. I was trying to go to your website, robertvanderbroek.com. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I can't access it. It's just your name, right? ROBEBB.
Yes, I will maybe start.
It's a double B with the Robert. It's B, double B.
Yes, but it's Vanden, right? Vandenbroek with an
S.
It's like yeah, I think we're getting it. Because I want the audience, if they have a browser open, I'd like them to take a look at your webpage, but again, it's not coming up. Hold on, maybe I'm spelling it wrong again.
Yeah, it's ROBERTVANDEN.
Okay, I've got it. Okay, good.
BROEKE.com.
That's correct. I'll spell it one more time. Robert with two B's, Vanden with an N, VANDEN.
Yes.
ROEKE.com, and there you see Robert and his testimonial and the crop circles and the spirit. Oh boy, that one looks like Eisenhower. That's a new one on me. Your photograph.
Yes,
that's odd. I've never seen that one before. I've seen John Lennon. I've seen some of the other dearly departed souls, but that's a surprise.
Robert,
Yes.
If I could ask Robert Vandenbroek, there's a particular photographs on there that show quite clearly two what I would call greys. They're aliens, and they're in a sort of translucent mode. Robert Vandenbroek, can you tell us a bit about who that grey is and what connection he has to you?
Yes, a couple of greys was also coming on the picture. Different creatures. Sometimes a sort of human type creatures, but sometimes also grey creatures. Different races was appearing on the picture by me. What I feel is that the greys was showing up on my picture to show the people that there are different races, that we must not discriminate, and that we must be more open-minded for all the different creations in the universe that have they are created also by God. And what it shows is that that people must that I must prepare people for the contact with extraterrestrials, and when people see pictures from extraterrestrials, they can process it. They can give.
I agree.
Yes,
it's part of it is teaching and preparing people psychologically to be prepared mentally, spiritually, and physically
Yes.
for a very, very strange experience. Many
Exactly,
of which I
exactly.
had as well.
If I could just add to that, what I noticed is synchronicity coming in. Robert approached me and said, "Look, I've got an interaction with an alien who has tentacles on its chest and on its back." And they left some of those tentacles behind when they contacted me. And I've had enormous difficulty trying to find someone to get them analysed and tested. I've even offered, to pay for it, myself, and still no one is taking up this offer.
Well, that's not uncommon. There's a great aversion on the part of science to touch.
But
or
the point
even
was,
look or
Robert.
Consider it. Yeah, go ahead.
So sorry to interrupt you, Robert. But the point I was making was that I'd seen in the Guardian, newspaper in London a few years back, that they reported that a Vatican member that was running the Lucifer astronomy out in Arizona, the telescope on behalf of the Vatican,
Yes.
he made a statement that said he would be prepared to baptize tentacled aliens if they had souls.
Wow.
And so when Robert approached me and I found out about his experience with tentacled beings, and him also telling me that this is a higher God consciousness, these beings are not our manifestation of Earth's creation and our thoughts. He said God is higher than our stars and our constellations, and that these things have come to us for me, I'm a Christian in a value. I believe in the Bible. I believe the Bible speaks a spiritual truth to us, for our soul, for our spiritualness, rather than the physical. And I believe that was asking me to even look outside of that in my own spiritual understanding. So what Robert was suggesting to me was that God is higher than all things. And although we see things and we call it demons or bad things, God has made all things.
That's
and so so for me it was very touching for me because it touched me personally. So what I'm doing is giving my faith to the Lord in knowing that all things are possible with him. So I'm here tonight because I believe in the Lord and I believe that I've been asked to help. And, it's a voluntary and I'm happy to do it. And I know that the Lord works in mysterious ways. So for me, I put it down to that the Lord is bigger than things that we know and understand and certainly understand right now. But we're asked to come into a world of disclosure. And I think this is all part of it in a sense. We're all participant to disclosure. I don't think it's going to be a POTUS scenario on the White House lawn. It's coming through the hearts and minds of man,
Exactly so.
Exactly, yeah.
Now,
thank you, Johnny. That's absolutely true. Thank you, Johnny. It shows that God is much bigger than people will expect, much more holy than people will expect. That it is the power, the light that is standing above all the star constellations and all
the God
solar
has
systems.
Has the power to manifest in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, exactly.
We are at the bottom of the hour. I would like to take a moment here to ask the audience to donate to Revolution Radio. Revolution Radio has costs to keep the servers going, to keep the network going. And I was listening to Nighthawk and Patrick English earlier, a great show that they had earlier about the moon and whether or not Apollo went to the moon. I listened very closely to both arguments, including the skeptics. And regarding the Van Allen radiation belt, which was a topic, and there are skeptics that say they couldn't have passed through it without getting cancer. The fact is that they shot through the Van Allen radiation belt at 25,000 miles an hour and were only in the belts for an hour and a half at most. The other interesting thing that people don't know, because it is hidden away, it's one of those dirty little secrets of science, especially NASA, that in the early 1960s, the United States was conducting hydrogen bomb tests in outer space. And I'll tell you, it's one of the most spectacular things that you are ever going to see, because in outer space, you don't get the mushroom. In outer space, the hydrogen detonation is perfectly spherical and it looks like a star being born. So they conducted several of those tests and they blew a hole in the Van Allen belt. Now, it's my suspicion that that hole was there for a purpose. They may have done it intentionally, or if by accident, it's my hypothesis that it's possible that they shot the Apollo landers, the Apollo capsules, through that hole in order to minimize exposure to the Van Allen radiation belt. But regardless of it, they were buzzing through it, pun intended, Buzz Aldrin. They were buzzing through it at 25,000 miles an hour, and we're only in there for an hour and a half out and an hour and a half back. Another time we'll do a follow-up show on these discrepancies about the moon landing and the hoaxing of the photographs. Not because we didn't go, but because they don't want us to see what's really there. There is a movie coming out this year in which I am featured. I am substituting for my dear friend, the late Jim Mars, in a film by Sibella Clare, which is E.T.'s Among Us, and this one deals with the extraterrestrial presence on the moon. So folks, how would you know that if you didn't listen to Revolution Radio? So please contribute to help Revolution Radio keep going. Now, I would like to introduce my friend from British Columbia, Emerson Dobroskay. Emerson, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, Emerson and I have been friends for a very long time. We correspond almost on a daily basis, and he has helped me in specifically. Emerson is a retired engineer, and during my research into the lunar anomalies and photographs that I discovered in NASA archives showing extremely tall buildings on the moon, I call it Big Ben on the moon, and if you Google that, Big Ben on the moon, you'll see what I'm talking about. A gigantic structure, tower, that was captured by Apollo 17 in a photo. And I knew that where the latitude of where the photo was taken and the altitude, and between the two of us, we were able to figure out that the building, using geometry, we were able to figure out in two different ways, by the way. He did it the Canadian way, and I did it the American way. We came to the same conclusion, that the building was 367 miles away from the Apollo camera that took it in orbit. So, Emerson, I hinted to the story. We came together because of our mutual friendship with a detective in British Columbia, our dear friend Leanne Jones, who apprised me of a singular tragedy that occurred in your life, which was the disappearance of your son, Emerson Dobroskay Jr. So that is the subject at hand, and why we have Robert van der Broek here. I'll tell the audience that after Emerson heard the show, he expressed interest in contacting Robbert. We sent Robbert Google images of the site, the area in University of Vancouver where Emerson's son was last seen. And Robert's been working on it for a couple of months, and today's the day that we're going to have this conversation. So, Emerson, would you give us background on all of this, please?
Okay. This fall will be 30 years that he's been missing, so it is a long time. It's hard to tell, is he still with us? Is he not with us? It's kind of like Schrodinger's cat. Until we get more data, we just don't know.
So would you tell us a story of his background and his genius, what he was doing at the time, how he excelled in mathematics, and the interest that Deep State had in his talents?
Yeah, he graduated from the U of S, University of Saskatchewan, an honors program with great distinction. He was in his final year in the exams, and I can't remember which is which, but he finished first in one and second in the other, math and physics. After that, the government of Canada offered him a studentship, which is a fully paid attendance, to train as a weatherman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we call that scholarships, or a grant. He received a grant from the Canadian government?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And what did he choose to study?
Meteorology.
Oh. And is that why he wound up in the deep forests? Where was he studying the meteorology? Was that a university program, or was he out in the wilds?
No, he was at UBC, which is a fairly big university.
Yes. And so he became an expert in weather as well as mathematics and physics?
That's what he was working on.
At the time that he disappeared?
That's correct.
Okay, now tell us about his disappearance. So the circumstances. If I know this must be very difficult, but the more you share about it, I think the more Robbert van der Broek and I and others listening will understand and perhaps draw information from the ether, whatever you want to call it, wherever the psychic realm operates, the Akashic record, if you wish to use Edgar Casey's jargon. So please tell us a little bit more about the days before. I would like to know about his mindset, his emotional disposition before he left for the concert, what he was going through, let's say, the week before his disappearance.
Well, actually, the weekend before his disappearance, he disappeared on a Thursday night. The weekend before, he was in Saskatoon for his convocation, and so he's back in town, so he partied with his buds for on and on and on, so he was dead tired.
Mm-hmm.
He got back, actually my cousin picked him up from the airport on his return flight, and she said he was just like a zombie. Too much partying, I guess. But when he got back, he got some sleep, wrote some exams, did fine. Well, actually, some of the texts he had at UBC he'd had before in math and physics, so it's like falling off a log.
Mm-hmm.
He went missing on the Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a call from someone in UBC. I got a call, and I figured, well, Thursday night, it wouldn't be the first time a university student made their own long weekend by taking Friday off. So I didn't really respond until Saturday when they said he still hadn't returned. And I just caught the next flight out, and that's where it started to unravel that he just fell off the face of the earth, totally disappeared.
So he went to a concert at the University of Vancouver, and if you look at the campus, it's a really large campus, and it would seem to be very well lit, well populated, and if he was going to a concert, must have been hundreds of people there, and yet no one remembers seeing him leave the concert or after the concert.
Well, actually, the concert was in the room above, and he was in the pub, the pit pub, with some of his friends from down the hall.
Mm-hmm.
And at last call, everybody got up to leave, and they just lost sight of him, and that was the last they saw of him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was up on campus with a friend from Vancouver, knows his way around the streets, let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out to campus same time of night, when the last call. Mm-hmm. And he looked around, he said, there was no crime done here. Too many people.
Right, that's what I was saying. Simply from the view from Google Earth above the campus on a Thursday night, I would imagine it was packed.
That's right.
So, did Emerson suffer a broken relationship? Did he have a girlfriend that he was close to and perhaps broke up with, or some emotional upheaval in the weeks before his disappearance?
Yeah, he had a lady friend, and of course he was moving to Vancouver, so that was getting tenuous. But when he went back for convocation, she had decided to go back to her ex-husband.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm. Well, that must have been very difficult if he had, intentions of a long-term relationship and married. So, let me ask you about the very last time you saw him. Tell me about his disposition, what he said to you, how he felt as a father. You tell me how you think he felt. There is empathy between father and son. So please tell me about that last meeting when he said, well, I don't know what he said, but I'm going to a concert or going to school. Tell us.
No, actually, it was after the convocation, and that was a long day too.
Mm-hmm.
And so him and I were just chatting, going through what he's expecting in the coming year. And we always did mentally hit it off well. I was nowhere near as bright as he was, but we got along fine.
The acorn does not fall far from the tree, Emerson, okay? All right, so tell us, what the last moment, I guess you were saying goodbye, it would have been the last moment, because you were in Saskatoon, he went back to British Columbia, correct?
That's right.
The convocation was in Saskatchewan, and then he went back to university. So tell us about that last time. Because, the girlfriend was in Saskatoon too, right?
That's right.
Okay. So this must have happened to him a little bit before. I mean, this denouement, this parting of the ways, must have happened to him shortly before that moment when you said to him goodbye, and his arrival in a zombie state to be picked up by a relative, sister, I recall.
My cousin.
Your cousin in British Columbia. So let's go back to that last moment, that last meeting when you said goodbye, and tell me what you felt.
Actually, I thought things were going very well for him. It was at the airport, of course.
Mm-hmm.
We took him out to catch his flight. Yeah, I anticipated seeing him rather soon because it was late October, so Christmas isn't that far away.
Right. So what did he say? How did he feel? What I'm trying to get at, did you sense a feeling of sadness or upset in him? Was he up? Was he down? Was he sideways? Was he heartbroken over the girlfriend? And that's what I'm trying to get to, his emotional disposition.
Actually, he generally had a good control over his emotions, to the point, actually, I was unaware that he had a lady friend until after he went missing.
Okay, and I was going to ask you that, whether or not he had shared with you the rupture in the relationship.
No.
Okay, so no, and the Mounties couldn't find a track or any association. Were there any other disappearances in around the university at that time? Because I would like to point out outstanding detective work of a friend we mentioned, Leanne Jones, who has written a book. It's called Death by River, which it relates the disappearances for long periods of times of many university students in Canada and the United States who disappear, as I say, for long periods of time, 10 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, and then wind up in a river or a lake. But when they are drawn out of the body of water, they were not there for 2 weeks or 10 days. They were just recently deposited. And so it's a marvelous book. One of these happened at a Canadian military academy, and very perplexing disappearances, reappearances, and death by river. So I recommend that to folks. And I would like to know whether Leanne was able to... Leanne did find out some more things about the background with the Forest Service. But at this moment, I think it's a good point at which to bring Robbert van der Broek into the conversation. And so I would like to introduce the two of you, and you have the conversation to come. So, Emerson, this is Robbert van der Broek, and Robbert, this is Em. Go ahead.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, and thank you for your trust. It's I with you. I be with you. It's very sad to must suffer so long that you not know what's going on, and he's missing now for so long time. And I really will try to help you with my impression what I have by this case. Is it okay for you that I describe some impression that I have?
Certainly.
Thank you so much. The first thing that I get, and that I don't know why I get it exactly, but I see this now a couple of times when I focus myself on this case. What I see, and I have tried to translate it. I hope that I translate it very good, and it sounds maybe very strange what I say, and forgive me, but I see a cruel space, how you call that? Cruel space? Are you know what it is, Robert? Can you translate
a crawl space, a small opening or tunnel.
Yes,
from one room to another, or into an underground basement, or an escape route, perhaps.
I can only imagine that pretty much every building has a way of examining the underside, and but there's quite a few buildings on that campus.
Okay. Very interesting for me. I see a crawl space, and it's a sort of, I have the impression from a very small space you must crawl in it. It's dark, you must have a lamp there. It's maybe under the school, or very in one of the buildings. There is something. I have very strong feeling that it is very important that maybe the police do research there and watch very good in the crawl space. I get very strong cruel space. And I know when things are coming out of the blue in my mind, I must take it seriously. How strange it sounds sometimes. I have learned to not think too logic sometimes. I try to listen what's coming out of the blue in my mind. I think that it is important to do research to the crawl space under the school buildings, and watch or they can find something. Maybe they found some evidence from him there. My feeling is that maybe, and of course, it's very difficult to tell what I feel. I have a feeling that maybe there is some physical evidence from him there. Maybe there is a body there or something. Because that's the first thing that I see. I have very strong feeling, and I really found it so difficult to say that, and I don't want to say that. You know, I have the same wish as you, of course. I wish that he is under us, that he is with us, that he is not passed away. But I have a feeling, I see him as a spirit, and I have a feeling that his spirit is in the spirit world now, but is also doing things with space, or with other planets, with maybe extraterrestrials, or maybe astronomic things. I feel that he is in a spirit world. I can feel it very strong, and I get all the time crawl space. That's what I feel all the time. I feel that he is I feel that there was a lot of stress in the last time from his life. I feel a lots of. He's very sensitive, but he's of course very intelligent, and he's having a lot of talents. Still, he's living as a spirit now, but he is very strong eye for detail. And what I feel is that there was a lot of frustration, and there was also some sort of person very jealous to him. I really don't understand exactly what I feel, but that's what I feel. And in more friendship relations, something like that, maybe somebody that was his ex-girlfriend, I don't know, but I feel that he was very, very, very tired, and I again see this cruel space all the time, and I have very strong feeling that with his spirit now, it's okay. I feel a lot of love from him coming to you, and but he is frustrating, of course, that they have not found his body. That's very frustrating. I feel his motivation to work through me now, to help, to make it happening that they can find him. I feel very strong that for the father, I must give a message. It's nothing really bad that I must say about your health, but I get you must a little bit take care about your stomach. How you say that? Stomach. Yes, I see that you can get pain there, and it's not something terrible, but there is maybe how you call that? It's possible that there is maybe some coming some pain there, or something like that, some sort of infection. When you feel that, go to the doctor and they can help you. It's not something. It's not a real big issue, but I feel very strong that when they do research to the crawl space, there is a big chance that they found something, and I think that it is very important that I feel that his body is not far away, and that was very strange when I was feel that when I was. I know that the police have do a lot of research in that area. I was a little bit flabbergasted that I was feel his body is not so far away, and I still see the crawl space. I see that. I think that it is very important to do research very close by the school, or where the school was, by these buildings in the crawl space, and maybe I can when I have some satellite picture from it, that I can maybe feel more exactly where it is the biggest chance that they can find something. And of course I really hope that I'm wrong and that he is still living. I really hope, but I cannot more than say what I see. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Robbert, thank you very much for that. I would like to ask you a couple of questions about the crawl space. Okay?
Yeah.
Because there are many levels on which we can interpret your vision. First of all, tell me whether the crawl space was circular, rectangular, or square.
Square.
Okay,
yes.
And the crawl space, how a square? So how big on an edge? How long? How many feet on an edge of the square? I see the edge is very
low. You know, you must crawl in it.
Yes.
And it's how long it is. I'm not sure about it, but I think not. I don't know. It's not. I don't know how long it is. I see.
Okay, let's just talk about the outside of it. Is it made of bricks or concrete?
Wait a minute, I go to Google Translate, then I can maybe translate what I see. I see sand also in it.
Sand.
Sand on the ground. I see sand. It's a crawl space, and I think the ceiling, or you know, the how you say that,
the top.
More, yeah, it's from beton. I think so. It's the how you say that. Wait a minute.
You mean like arched?
The ceiling. Yeah, the ceiling is from beton. I think so.
From what?
I think that the ceiling above it is from beton.
What is that? What is that word? Beton.
Oh yeah. Wait a minute. From stone. Sorry,
okay,
from stone.
Okay, stone. Okay.
I think stone, maybe partly wood, but I see sand. I see
what color is the stone?
A little bit yellow sand. I see.
Yeah, and what color is the stone above?
Gray, I think so.
Gray stone.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
and there is it's deeper in, and I see when you will come there with an wait a minute. I do my best that with a flashlight. When you come there with a flashlight, there is some it look like, or there is some deeper. When you go deeper in the crawl space, there is some. It ends in some a pipe. There is it's square, but in the middle of the square, on the end, is a sort of pipe. I hope that I say it good.
Yeah, pipe. That would indicate a plumbing or heating system.
Yeah, that's good possible. And I see there is sand there, yellow, a little bit dark, but more yellow. Mm-hmm. And I feel I have the impression that there are bones. There is something there, and I really don't know how it's come there. But I see this. I have only this impression, and I feel the responsibility to say that. And I really hope that I'm wrong. Okay. I really hope.
Would you do an experiment with me, Robert?
Yeah.
Would you do an experiment with me? I want you to visualize that crawl space, and that you are in the crawl space, but you've just crawled in just a couple of feet. Okay?
Yes.
Your knees are not even in there. Your arms and your head, and you took a look. Now, in your mind's eye, I would like you to back up out of the crawl space. I'd like you to stand up, look at it, look at its shape that you've described, and now I'd like you to turn around in the room and describe what you see. Turn around and look at the room where the entrance into the crawl space is. Describe that to me.
Okay, did I describe the crawl space inside, or
No, you are back out of the crawl space. You look at the crawl space. It's in a wall. You look at the wall, look up. Now turn around 360 degrees all around the room and tell me what you see on all the walls of the room. And if you can see the ceiling, tell me that.
Yes, okay. It look like a little bit gray or something, and I see something in the ground that you can open. It's you can open, or you can, but there is another way. It look like, or you can open it, but I feel that for a long time nobody has come there. It looks, and when I take a look in the crawl space, I see on the left. left part, or no, right, sorry, right. When you're coming in, I see on the right part, I see the sand is a little bit going up, and there is something. I feel there is something, that there they can find something, but I feel it's very close. It's maybe under the scroll, maybe under, or very close by a bar or something, or by, there is something. I can feel it very strong. I know that there is something there. I feel that.
So let me ask you, the wall in which the crawl space is situated is a gray wall. Are there any other fixtures, plumbing, pipe? Just that wall. You step back, you look at the crawl space, you look up, right to left, just that wall. What do you see on that wall?
Moment, I will.
Then we'll turn around and do each wall.
Yes.
Robert, it's John in London. Can you
Yes, go
hear
ahead.
any sound as well with it? Do you hear any sounds around, local sounds?
That would be
Yes.
useful. Any impression is useful.
Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, I take now a look. I take a look in the crawl room. Yes. Yes, I feel that it is sometimes I hear some sort of echo noise, but I think that it is coming out the pipe. Some sort of noise from things maybe outside. I don't know, but I see this more grey beton with lots of sand. Yeah, lots of sand. There is more sand, but it's not a natural place. It's a crawl room. It's crawl space. It is.
Is it possibly like a drain or something from the beach coming in? When you say sand, you know, is it coming in from just a sort of place that's not catered for or cared for? Is it like a drain or something like this? What we call sort of a ditch for water, or you mentioned this, but. You know what Robert was asking, in your thoughts of you being in the moment of it, are you able to turn around and look from the outside? Can you see how Emerson Jr. Sir would have walked in there or got in there? Did he crawl in there? Do you have any knowledge from that? And Robert, is it possible that you can speak to the spirit of him and ask him, is he able to come from the other side, living a different experience, to come back and give his father some closure?
Yes, I have a feeling that it feels for me almost of he was self going in, and that's very strange. I don't know why. I cannot understand why. I feel very strong this crawl space under a building. I feel myself dizzy. I feel that I'm chemical, not total fit, fresh, very tired, and it looks very sad also. I feel very sad. I feel almost crying feeling. And
Robert, I would like to stop right now, because these things are very, very powerful, and I think that you've shared a lot of information with us. I would like to say, Johnny Webb, you are very insightful, because the site of the University of Vancouver is situated in an area that's very close to the water over there. In fact, I from my view of the Google Earth view of the area, I would say that there are even roads right off the campus that lead directly to the waters, and of course the university would have drainage that would spill. I wanted to ask one last question about the crawl space. When you were in the crawl space, was it flat and level, or did it incline? Did it go down incline or go up incline, or was it just straight and flush?
I think straight. I don't
Straight.
hope that I misinterpret, but I see straight. And I have very strong the wish that somebody will take a look in the crawl rooms under the schools and in the buildings very close by the school. But I have a feeling maybe by the school, there is something. I
Maybe
can feel
even
it
in
very
the same
strong.
building. Maybe even in the same building where he.
Maybe,
The
exactly,
pub?
exactly.
Something
yes.
is telling me that something happened to him at that concert in the pub, and
Yeah.
resulted in a very, very debilitating condition physically, and we know mentally and emotionally. He was
Yeah.
overwrought, and
Yeah.
Other
I
thing,
have a
other thing.
feeling,
Hold
but
on, hold on.
yeah.
Hold on. The other thing that's very telling in what you relate about his work in astronomy and astrophysics and extraterrestrial stuff also dovetails with something that Emerson said to me years ago, that he suspected that his son, Emerson Jr., could have been sheep-dipped by the deep state because he was so brainy, he was so brilliant, and America had a habit of imposing a brain drain on Canada. We would take their most brilliant scientists and engineers and basically bring them to the United States to work for us. And in that case, many of them had to go into deep cover and basically disappear from their ordinary lives, take on another identity, a different name, a different life history in order to work in black operations. And that was something that Emerson and I discussed. The other one was the possibility that a rogue state like North Korea that has a reputation for this, North Koreans have kidnapped hundreds of Japanese people, Japanese scientists and civilians. The civilians are kidnapped in order to force them to teach perfect Japanese to Korean spies. And of course they do steal and have been stealing scientists and engineers, kidnapping, abducting them to force them into slave labor working on their rocket programs. I would like to ask Emerson for his reaction to what we've just heard.
Well, without more data, anything is possible. But I have one thing I have for Robert Doubleby, is if there's a possibility that he's not at the campus, like might he be on Vancouver Island? Yeah. And the reason I say that is this part of British Columbia, you most of the time you find rock pretty quickly when you start digging. So most houses, especially out on the island, they don't have basements. They just have crawl spaces underneath.
Yes.
And there was a report. Somebody was certain they saw him a day or two later out on Vancouver Island, just walking past. I guess it was Duncan. No, not Duncan. The Nanaimo campus of.
The which campus of what? University of Vancouver? I think we lost Emerson.
Yeah, I think also.
Emerson, are you there? Okay, Robert, you carry on. I'm going to try to get Emerson back. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Oh, well, Emerson, you're there. We lost you for.
Yeah,
we lost you for a moment. Okay.
Okay. How far
Please continue. You were saying, let's see. Oh, about Vancouver Island, that there's houses there, have crawl spaces, and you hadn't mentioned that he had been seen on Vancouver Island 2 days later. Is that something that Leanne discovered, or did you discover that?
No, a person who knew me from years ago saw a young lad, which is Emerson's age, and she said, splitting image, just like I was at his age. So she said, is there a possibility he's out on the island?
I see. Did he have a house there? Or was he residing there in campus? Or what was his, where would he stay if he were on Vancouver?
Well, his mother's sister and family live just outside of Ladysmith.
Mm-hmm. And does any of the description that Robbert is giving ring a bell, say, with any structure, either municipal or the school, or something that might remind you something on Vancouver Island?
Well, actually, all of the lower mainland in Vancouver and the island is very close to rock, so most houses will not have a basement. There'll be crawl spaces under them.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Now, I'd like to go back to Robbert Vanderbroek. I know this is very difficult to discuss with the father of the missing person.
Of course, very emotional.
Yes, that's why I stopped it, because I know how sensitive you are, and I don't. And one thing that mediums, or media, or shamans have to be aware of, that there is a physical toll, an energetic toll that's taken upon the body when you are reliving the emotional experiences, sometimes the distress of a departed spirit. You know, the sadness, the misery that the spirit has felt. The shaman will feel it, and that can have a deleterious effect on one's physical makeup. It's like draining your battery while going in contact with an angelic spirit or the divine spirit will raise you into ecstasy and fill you with life and energy. These things can sometimes drain you, and so I really didn't want it to go any farther. We've got a lot of information there, and I think it's enough to start to make a lot of different lines of investigation. The question I have for you is, do you think if Emerson wound up and ended up in the crawl space, do you think that it was of his own volition, or was there foul play involved? Was he there conscious on his own, or was he deposited there unconscious by someone else?
Yeah, that question I was asked also on the universe, if I can see something from it. It looks like, but maybe I'm wrong, but it looks like if he was coming self there, but I found it very difficult to make that conclusion. I will be very careful with it. You know, the only thing that I see and I feel is that he is maybe under the school, or maybe in some building very close by the school where he was for the last time. I really feel that I get some sort of, when I go with my intuitive radar, I feel a sort of red dot, you know, there is something, but I hope that I'm wrong and that he is coming back living, you know, and that we can give him back to his father. Of course.
Well, if you're in communication with his spirit, and we haven't seen him in 30 years, I think that it is safe to conclude, but, well, let's never give a hope, but we have been channeling a spirit during this conversation, and it has spoken to you about many details. We have also discovered, pardon the expression, a psychological profile of Emerson Jr. and the distresses that he was going through, and I use the plural because having to sit for exams, pass tests that will keep your grant money and your scholarship going, on top of breaking up with your paramour and being the one who's walked away from rather than the one who's walking away. That is a terrible blow to the ego. Then we have the fact that when he arrived back in British Columbia to be picked up by cousin, I think it was a she, said that he was in a zombie state, which seems to be indicative of intoxication of some sort, medication, perhaps antidepressives. I don't know. We never asked whether or not he was on any medication at any time, or did he believe in antidepressive or painkillers. And then there's the concert, and the concert was a really dark concert, folks. It was a really very dark heavy metal band whose name I will not mention because I will not shine any light on it. But it was a very kind of goth, heavy metal, quasi-satanic stage show.
Terrible.
So he was there under that. If he didn't go to the concert, he was under it in the pub. And what do you do in a pub? You drink till you drop. And so it's possible that he found himself disoriented and went to some familiar space, familiar to him. I imagine he must have been a very curious fellow and always exploring things. Emerson, am I correct that he would be a person who would like to know where everything is in wherever he was?
Precisely.
Yeah. And so I know for myself as a boy growing up in New York, in Hell's Kitchen, that we had a lot of places. I talk about crawl spaces. We had immense junkyards and hardware warehouses and secret tunnels everywhere, and we would find them. We were kids and we enjoyed it. We enjoyed crawling into some secret tunnel to nowhere, and then it became the clubhouse. So I think that kind of youthful mentality and spark of curiosity was part of him. And perhaps when he found himself incapacitated, so that he might not be able to make it home, he sought refuge in some safe space to him, and perhaps succumbed to a combination. And this is pure speculation. Again, it's my feeling, my intuition, the sum total of everything that we've shared, Emerson and Leanne Jones and I, over the last 10 years or so, and you, Robert, and Johnny, your insights. This is the sum total of my analysis of these circumstances. And so it may not have been suicide as we think of it, but maybe just crawling away into a quiet space where he could recover. But as I said, if he was medicated and he was drinking alcohol, they make terrible poisonous compounds. And if the will to live had been stripped from him because of the loss of love, it would explain many things. And withdrawal is part of this reaction,
Yeah.
So, Emerson, would you care to comment on any of this?
Well, the one thing I will say is I'm almost certain he wasn't on any kind of medication, but university students do drink until they drop.
Yes. And that's what I mean. That on a Friday night, a Thursday night at this huge concert with everything blasting, he may have drunk too much and then crawled into a space where he just couldn't recover. And I would say that perhaps with this information, you might approach the authorities and ask them to make a search. What harm can it do? What harm can it do?
I'll definitely do that.
Now,
I hope so. I hope really that they take it serious and that they will take a look. I hope so.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'd like to turn my attention to this whole field, this psychic realm, and ask Robbert what he thinks the origin of this energy is. Okay, in the sense of my impression is that spirits are magnetic. You know, that the soul, in a sense, is a magnetic bottle that's embedded in this flesh. And also that this magnetic bottle gives shape to our forms. And so the self-image that you retain in your mind of what you're supposed to look like is transferred to this magnetic bottle. And the effects of life, the experiences of life, accident, illness, disease, recovery, injury, the body's a remarkable machine, self-repairing machine, but the mind has a lot to do with it. It's keeping it in shape, you know, and the shape of the mind imposes the shape of the body. So this faculty that you and I and many other people share, it has to be based on an energy. My impression is that it is electromagnetic. What is your feeling about it?
Yes. I have the same sort of feeling that it is electromagnetic. That spirits, when people feel spirits, when I feel spirits, I can feel this electrostatic energy also around me, on my skin. Sometimes it feels as you walk through a spider web. I don't know, in your face a little bit, you feel the tinkling. But I'm sure that, but it is more than only electromagnetic. It's also some energy that we cannot, in a sense, we can, the soul you cannot destroy, the spirit you cannot destroy, but they work. The energy body is electrostatic, the electromagnetic. Sorry, and they can influence also sometimes the lights. They can flicker with the lights. They can make contact with the brain. Also, they can influence the brain electromagnetic, and they can have telepathic contact also in this way, in this electromagnetic way. It's a real energy. It's scientific. Scientists have proved it over and over that telepathy exists between living persons, but it exists also between living persons and the so-called dead persons. That does not exist. You know, the spirit will live forever.
Yes, indeed. And I can attest to that, having had so many ghost experiences and visitations. How can one develop it? I have my own methods of having developed this through the studies of many Oriental arts and Western psychology. How do you develop it? Or would you say, can one develop it? How do you wake it up? I think it's in everyone, and
everybody.
Everybody has it, but it's been suppressed, and it seems that UFO experience or alien experience is a trigger that releases it, and suddenly all these faculties start to come forth. Which reminds me, in many ways, of the Christian concept that when you receive the Holy Spirit, you get the 7 gifts of the Holy Ghost. And
yes,
right?
exactly.
So I think there is a corollary there to having the psychic circuit turned on by spiritual experiences. Because seeing a UFO, as you say, the size of a jumbo jet, and seeing that it's intelligently guided, that just destroys 2 cornerstones of science: the theory of relativity. And if the aliens exist, of course, evolution is not what we've been told it is. That there's another part to the matrix. So
exactly.
Obviously, because we don't have the picture at hand on radio, describing what Robbert actually videoed, in fact, was him walking outside of an area close to where he lives, and it's a massive UFO that doesn't move. It's just standstill. And as he moves you can see it's just stationary. I've also seen another shot of the video where the thing is moving, and it's unbelievable. It's a sort of oval, like disc shape, but very spiky on the edges, almost. Sort of, there's a point to it. I don't know the point, but there's like a spike to the edges of it. It's quite strange. But yeah, robertvandenbroek.com or Facebook, robertvandenbroek.com. You should be able to see the videos, and it's on YouTube as well. But back to you, Robert.
Yeah, Robert, tell me about your first alien experience. When did you first actually encounter, communicate, see, or be touched by an alien? Tell me that.
The first time I remember that was in my sleep room. I was discovered the first crop circles, and then when that was happening, when I was seeing for the first time light balls above the circles, and also above my house, and my parents was see it. Then on a normal night, on a Monday night, I was go to sleep, and I was open my eyes, and I was see a gray type alien standing by a cabinet in my living room. And then later I was going sucked to the special fields where the crop circus was happening, and I was having my first encounter with a creature. She was giving the name Doya. That was her name. When you translate it to the down-to-earth language, you get the name Doya, and she was appear right in my face by the field where I was discovered the first circles. And one time I was having a very strong experience with her, that she was take me with her in a sort of big orb, orange white light orb. When I remember me good, I remember me white yellow type orb, and she took me in space, and people can believe it or not, I swore in the name of God I was experiencing this. And I was see the Earth from out space. I was see satellites with the sun panels, how you call that, the solar
panels.
Yes, I was see that it was there, and I was there, and I was in a sort of light shield. And then we was go to a tunnel, and I was see a sort of crystal, what you see also when you have when it is snowing, when you see the snow, how you call that, snowflakes, when you do them under a microscope, you see this crystal, this beautiful form, and I was see that was going in each other and out each other, and I was see all the colors, rainbow type of colors, but also colors that I cannot describe. And then I was sucked to another solar system, coming in another space, maybe other solar system, I don't know where it was, but I was going to a planet that was look like, very strong, look like the Earth. But then a different planet with also a biotope, also with oceans, with clouds and everything. And I was see pyramids on the planet, and I was see a very big, I remember me, a very big bird, like an eagle, but then so big, like a big plane. It was, I remember me, and it was flying over us. He was not see us, but it was fly over us, and it was so impressing. I think that they was having an evolution there, that they was having really some very big birds, much bigger than what we know on this Earth. And I was see that there was living a sort of human type of creatures, and I was discovered that they was building also pyramids, and I was learn on that moment that the pyramid is a cosmic form. It exists also on other planets. The Egyptians they must have some contact with extraterrestrials or with the God source in that time when they was building the pyramids. And it was a very interesting discovery, and I was feel a lots of love there, and I was see also that the collective consciousness on that planet was come on a higher level, on a level where we, with association, will come also in the future. And it was very impressive to experience that. But for me, I have discovered by myself that I blocked this experience away. For me, it's very difficult when I remember this space travel that I was have. I get so lots of pain and a sort of homesick that I will leave this earth. You know, it's. I belong in space, and that sounds strange, but I don't. I have a job here, but when I remember me too much from this experience, almost the same like a near-death experience. This sort of people are, found it sometimes very terrible that they was bring back by the doctor. You know, they
yes,
will
that's
stay
a
there.
very interesting statement, because I have heard that statement from many people who have had these experiences, either a UFO experience where they were taken away and shown other worlds, and then being brought back and saying, oh, that I don't want to come back. I want to stay home. I want to go home.
I know exactly what they say.
Listen to this. The famous psychologist C.G. Jung in 1944 was feeling a bit ill and went to see his doctor, and his doctor gave him a shot of penicillin without knowing that Jung was allergic to penicillin, and Jung went into shock and he started to die. And in the process of dying, his soul left his body and started to rise. He rose up above the earth, looked at the earth, and he described the earth in such details that no one realized how accurate his description was until 1963, or actually later, 1967, when we started to launch the Apollos that got far enough away from the Earth to get a full picture of the Earth. And when they compared that picture, specifically the picture of the Earth showing Saudi Arabia, the Red Sea, and Israel in the Mediterranean, the description of Jung was so accurate that people were flabbergasted. The story continues.
Amazing.
The story continues that Jung's soul went to the moon and he entered a cave, and he was very excited. He knew he was dying, but he had no fear of death, and he was looking forward to this, like, this is it. I've been waiting for this all my life. I'm going to find out the secret of life. And he's entering the cave in the moon, and suddenly he says that a very short, dark brown, Hindu-looking man with a big turban, like a big head guy, a little guy, said, no, you can't come in. And he said, no, I want to come in. He said, no, you've got to go back. Your job is not finished on the planet Earth. He says, but I have to know. I want to go. I want to be here. And in the moment when he was rebuffed by the guardian of the entrance to the moon, where souls are recycled, by the way, that goes back to Aristotle, he was rebuffed. No, you have to go back. And he started arguing, I don't want to go back, I don't want to go back. And he felt himself being pulled back, and it was the doctor giving him a shot of adrenaline to try to save his life. And he was fighting the doctor's effort to bring him back to life, and he was arguing with the extraterrestrial that I want in. And when he got back and the doctor saved his life, Jung was incredibly angry at him. And he was so irate that he couldn't speak to him for 2 weeks after that, because the doctor has spoiled his chance to learn the universal truth.
That's so sad. Yeah, I understand completely, but it's very interesting what you tell about Jung. That's so interesting. This is very proof of his experience that he was described.
I would like to recommend
everything.
the book.
Yeah,
I'd like to recommend the book, it's called Jung and the Life of Our and the Story of Our Time. It's Jung and the Story of Our Time. And it puts Jung in the context of one of the greatest minds of the 20th century in his exploration of the psyche, his description of the nature of the collective unconscious, the nature of the shadow, archetypes, the eruptions of the subconscious, the projections that come up out of the soul and are projected out of the human soul through the human body as external forms in our reality. And it's written by Lawrence van der Post. Lawrence van der Post wrote a book called The Bushmen of the Kalahari. He's very famous for that, but he should be more famous for Jung and the Story of Our Times. And that's where you'll
interesting.
Thank you. Many of Jung's psychic experiences.
Interesting. Robert, you know if there is also, that's sounds maybe a little bit sophisticated for me, but is there also a Dutch translation from it? You know that? Then I can read it maybe also.
As to the man, his name is Lawrence van der Post. So I think that, that's a Dutch name, or he was.
It's a Dutch name, it sounds
South
very
African.
Dutch. Yes,
South African Dutch. So look him up. I'm sure you'll find it. It's one of the greatest books.
I will find out.
One of the greatest books I've ever read. Yes.
Thank you so much.
We have many teachers now at our fingertips through the internet. I had to work years and years and years going and looking for books and articles, studying Jungian psychology, which is a big part. I mean, my schematic of the worldview is patterned after following the precepts of sacred geometry in the material world, but a Jungian approach in the psychological world. I also use the term creative psychology, which is a school of psychology that was established by Robbert S. Deropp, D-E-R-O-P-P. He wrote a book called Drugs and the Mind, but he wrote a more important book called The Master Game. And in The Master Game, he synthesized Taoism, Jungian psychology. So he joined Western psychology, Jungian psychology, and Taoism into a cohesive school of psychology that he calls creative psychology. And when I teach, whether it's psychology, counseling, Tai Chi, psychic development, I use The Master Game as the student manual. So Robbert S. Deropp, D-E-R-O-P-P, a very important man in my life. I wanted to ask Emerson.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to ask Emerson for his thoughts, and actually I wanted to ask Emerson to recount his UFO experience, which he waited many years to experience. Would you care to share that with us, Emerson?
Sure. I was 63 before I saw my one and only UFO, just sitting out on the front porch having a cigarette, and this thing comes by about a long city block away.
That's very close.
It was, I'm guessing, probably 15 to 20 feet, fully circular, pearly white, but with a fringe, light fringe of blue, exactly the same color as St. Elmo's fire. Now, okay. Now, coming out in the head of it, in the direction it was heading, was probably a dozen or 14 pipes, various sizes, various lengths, but the pipes were probably twice as long as the ball was, and it was following there's a fault line just out in the hayfield here. It was following that fault line. Now the orb itself was fuzzy because of the what I think is probably just ionized nitrogen. So
right. I would remind people that Emerson is seeing this through the eyes of an engineer with a lot of experience, and that was my impression too. Your St. Elmo's fire and the blue aura ionization. Let me ask you a question: do you smell anything unusual or different?
Not a thing. No. I didn't hear a thing, but the orb was fuzzy around the edge, but the pipes were not. And I think they were probably flying along that fault line with picking up air samples. There's radon gas and a variety of things you'll find coming out of the earth. Mm-hmm. And And probably you could take the number of pipes and cut them in half, because they would probably double. They'll take samples from 2 pipes and then average them, because that's usually what science will do.
I see. I understand.
Mr. Emerson, if you don't mind me asking a question, sir, as you have that recollection, do you remember how you felt yourself at the time of witnessing that experience?
Actually, no change whatsoever. But I will say this one thing. This was about, just a matter of weeks after I made some sort of suggestion to Robbert over the internet, and wouldn't you know it, a couple weeks later, I see my first and only UFO at the age of 63. So, as I said to Robbert at the time, I think you are the vector.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Robbert, that's very interesting, Robbert, that you have canalisated maybe a little bit.
It's a humorous anecdote. I enjoy it very much. That Emerson said to me, "Oh, I think you're a vector. You're medium," and I said, "Thank you very much." But then Emerson said to me that he was a bit upset. He hadn't seen a UFO in 63 years, so he put out a thought. Now, this is important because Robert Vanderbroek is being invited to go somewhere to summon the UFO. We'll talk a little bit toward the end of the show about the prospect of this. But Emerson said he was out on the porch or driving, and he said, "Hey, listen, I want to see a UFO. I'm a friend of Robert Morningstar." Is that not correct? Something along those lines?
Yeah, pretty much.
And then, to his surprise, was it a week later or 2 weeks later, that you saw your first UFO? So
that's right.
Well, thank you for crediting the vectorship, and that's a very good term, vector, because vector is something that has a direction and a force behind it. It's sort of a pointer, but more than just a static pointer. It's got an energy that's going. It's more like the arrow moving than the arrow standing still. And I'm very happy to play that part for you, for many other people. I would like to send my greetings to someone who is listening. His name is Dr. J of Dr. J Radio Live in LA. And we did a show yesterday which had some interesting correlates in the discussion that we had today. But I want to wish him very well in his recuperation and his recovery. He's doing radio shows again. Johnny Webb and I are doing episodes with him, and Johnny is his engineer and co-host. And I think this is turning into one big happy family of cooperating radio hosts and engineers. We're putting together something that's bigger than anyone realizes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, with each other we stay strong.
Okay. Now, Johnny Webb, you were telling me about this prospective interview to go to Italy and summon a UFO. Would you care to tell us more about that?
Robert asked me to translate the letters for him and to possibly give a sort of response back to the invitation, which came from a Japanese company that were working on behalf of Turner Broadcasting Services. And they've got a documentary that's coming out about supernatural experiences. It also includes Bigfoot and other things like that. So they were looking to invite Robert to a particular experience of the one of the team members from Japan. She's got about 10 years experience with an Italian lady, and I think that's where she initially heard from it. But she said that she's stayed in contact with this Italian lady, and that she's asked herself, if possible, that someone who can summon UFOs could indeed summon the UFOs and these universal aliens that have taken her half-hybrid child that is half hers, and she wants to know after 16 or so years, can she communicate with it? And so they've asked Robert Vanderbroek if he can help and assist in this woman's plight in case, and again on behalf of the channel. So Robert's sort of mediating now with them. and we should be sort of getting back to them very shortly. But back to you, Mr. Morningstar.
So I want to ask you, please give me a description of the extraterrestrial lady, physical description of the one that took you to those worlds where you didn't want to come back from. And then I want to ask you about your experiences with the Greys. We have just a few minutes left, so
yes.
Please describe her. I want to determine what race of extraterrestrials she was.
Yes, it was more. She was a little bit humanoid, but her skin was totally white, and there was light around her. It was looked like more an angel apparition. It was very impressing to me. Her eyes was not exactly the shape from what humans' eyes are. They was a little bit bigger, blue. And one time when Nancy Talbot was visit the Netherlands, she was give her camera to me and was asked me, I will make a picture. And then Doya was coming on the camera with a sort of, I don't know how you call that, dress. She was having a right dress, very beautiful. And I don't know exactly what for type of race she was, but it feels more humanoid and a little bit
Was she very tall? Did you say she was tall?
She was taller as I, yes. Yes.
That's pretty tall. The reason I ask, as I said, I wanted to see what race this is. Have you ever read the book Millennial Hospitality by Charles Hall? Charles Hall was a U.S. Air Force weather officer who was stationed out near Area 51 in Nevada to man an isolated weather station, and while manning that station he started to see UFOs coming and going and landing in the area, and he found out that the extraterrestrials have a base there, that the United States government allows a certain race of extraterrestrials basically an operating area and domiciles, a home, where they have their own society. They trade information and technology with the United States. They despise contact with human beings. They think that we are really smelly little animals. And he describes them as extremely tall, extremely pale white, big blue eyes, and luminescent. And
that sounds That sounds a little bit the same.
Sent to me indicates that these are the tall whites. And he was able to make direct contact with the tall whites, and he's written about 4 books called Millennial Hospitality, in which he has described all of these things and experiences and his direct contact with these beings over several years of time. That he was one of the few airmen that was able to stay and hold the position in this weather station. And it's a marvelous book. So that's good.
Sounds
now, I'd
very
like to ask
interesting,
you, we have maybe 5 minutes left, or less than that. But I'd like to ask you to compare that with your contact with gray extraterrestrials. And
yes, that was very. I was having also some experience that grays was coming around my bed. 2 grays types. There was paralyzed me that I cannot move more, and I was not feel anxiety. I remember me that I was feel God still around me, and that I realized on that moment also that these creatures was not feel so much, but they was thinking, and they was not knowing the emotions from anxiety, and I was give myself over. And I was feel myself close to God, and then I was remember myself, and it's absolutely true, when I'm lying, God have the right to punish me. I was go on board from a sort of spaceship, a sort of space that was filled with light, and I was feel myself safe. I was it's part of the deal, and I was watching through a hole downstairs, and I was see a field there. a field with grass under me, and it was nearby the special fields where the crop circles was happening. Then it was bring me back in my body and was bring my body back in my sleep room. All the doors was closed. Nothing was open. How they do, I don't know, but I was experiencing this really, and I know that the grace, the message that I was get was that the grace was do these abductions to people, and the reason was that they was having a conception problem on in the world where they living, and they was take cells from living persons on the earth, from humans, and also sperm to create some other hybrid race there in the world where the Greys live. For some people this experience was very traumatic, and I understand that. I have respect for the feelings from the people that was experiencing it as traumatic, but I know that it is part of the soul plan from some people. Before they was coming to the earth, to born as a baby, the people, when they was on the other side, they have decided, when I'm coming on this earth, I will be part of the experiment from the Greys, and I will help them to fix the problem in the world where they live. And I don't say that that it is not traumatic, that they cannot experience it traumatic. I understand that, but that's the program from the Greys, but that problem is now okay. You don't hear so much more from this sort of experience and abductions, because this is now, this problem is now okay. And what I will say to a lot of people is, listen to your intuition. God is talking through his intuition. You can hear the voice from God in your intuition. The first thing that's coming up in your mind, it's the same when you think on somebody, on some living person, and the telephone is going, and you take the telephone, then that person is many times on the other side from the line. You can have also telepathic contact with dead people when they coming out of the blue up in your mind. They will not call you when they have no muscles, so they cannot ring your telephone, but it means that they are thinking on you and that they are around you on that moment. And it's the same as muscle training. You can learn what's, out of the blue is coming up in your mind without logica. It's coming up in your mind that will say that it is an external factory, that it will tell you something that is coming from another dimension, or it's telepathy. And I will say to everybody, when skeptics say that intuition don't exist, don't listen. Intuition exists, and we are instinct creatures. And when you believe what you feel, you will coming on higher levels, more higher than people will expect.
Okay, thank you very much. And Emerson, closing thoughts, please, would you?
Well, I just wanted to thank Robbert of the Two Bs very much. Thank you for opening my mind to. This is something I hadn't expected, but knowledge is knowledge.
Thank you so much, and thank you that you take me serious, and God bless you. Thank you.
Johnny Webb, last thoughts?
Yeah, I just hope that it's brought some kind of closure to Mr. Emerson. I know I never wanted to hear that negative or the death sound of someone or someone possibly not being still alive. I feel for you, sir, and I implore you that you still have the heart to continue to look in faith. But I hope it helps you and gives you some form of a closure that you can at least, I've always thought that when people come in our lives, it's not for nothing. So I think that when someone comes in our life and possibly leaves our life, they leave that mark that keeps us going, and it keeps us on a real reason for them being here, even though they've passed, that you've aspired and you've gained something from their experience, But I always believe that when we pass on, sir, we will always meet up again and go back to our soulmates, and they'll participate and be in another part of a world where it sounded like, from what Robbert was saying, he's already living another life experience. And so, I wish you well, sir.
Thank you very
Yes.
much, Johnny. I will let your eloquent words speak for all of us and for the show. Thank you for tuning in to the Morning Star Report and hanging around for the cognitive resonance. I think that we really resonated tonight. Please don't forget to contribute to Revolution Radio to keep these programs going. Thank you for being with us, and see you next week.